All right. Today we're talking about social psych in the courtroom. A lot of you have taken the, what did we call that class? The, no, I got distracted there. The psych and law course that was taught for a while. I don't know if it'll be taught anymore. It's related to this. But again, it's social psychology applied to the courtroom and how social interactions can influence. Okay? So, first thing is eyewitness testimony. Of course, most criminal trials are based on eyewitness testimony. Even little children know if you want to end an argument abruptly, you just say, I saw it with my own eyes. All right, I can still remember having an argument with my son where he was convinced that leprechauns were real, and I was trying to tell him leprechauns are not real. And he just, but I saw one with my own eyes run under the cupboard at school. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's the end of that argument. You won, okay? Turns out a vivid eyewitness account is much more convincing than a ton of circumstantial evidence. And it's crazy because even if the witness is discredited, you know, like has 2400 vision and wasn't wearing your glasses or something. One of my favorites was this movie called My Cousin Vinny with Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei. So Joe Pesci is this bad lawyer. He has to come, Vinny, and he has to go down south, and his cousin is accused of murder of a convenience store clerk, and his cousin Vinny is this, you know, Joe Pesci is this terrible New Yorker or whatever. So he comes down to Mississippi or something, and they got this woman on there, and she's like, I saw those boys kill the clerk, you know, and of course Vinny, the lawyer, acts, you know, he's a horrible lawyer at first, but then he gets better and, you know, some victory and whatever. And so what happens is here he comes out, and this old lady, she's got these glasses that are like this thick, and they go, okay, so here is a view from your kitchen window, and they show the kitchen window is covered in rust on the screen, and this woman's glasses are this thick, and he takes a tape measure and he pulls it out 50 feet, and he goes, how many fingers am I holding up, dear? 7? You know, this old lady, nothing. But when this old lady says, I saw it with my own eyes, the jury believed it. They just didn't even consider all of these other factors, you know, that the woman was so far away that you couldn't tell who it was anyway, and her window was covered in this rusty screen, and she's got these glasses that are this thick, and it's a hilarious movie. You got to watch it, whatever. So when it comes to eyewitness testimony, there's basically 4 possible outcomes. You know, well, I'll just leave it at 2 here. Valid and invalid. That is to say, when somebody gives eyewitness testimony, what they're saying is either true or not true. And it can be true, you know, you witness the event and you tell the truth, or it could be true in the sense that you didn't witness the event, but you put together circumstantial evidence to arrive at a conclusion, and you say you didn't actually see it, but it's still a valid statement. Invalid, of course, could be lying. It could be things such as a vendetta, you know, to get payback at somebody, or, you know, we always hear about witnesses that are threatened by the mafia or some shit like this, and then they don't testify because they're too scared. But unfortunately, this last one is all too often. Testimony is invalid, but the person giving the testimony, like that old lady. Now, that old lady had nothing against those boys. When that old lady says, I saw those boys kill that clerk, she truly and utterly believed the words that came out of her mouth. And this is the scariest part about the eyewitness testimony, is when a jury hears eyewitness testimony and the person giving it truly believes what they're saying, why wouldn't the jury believe it? Okay? So how important is this stuff? Obviously, eyewitness testimony is huge. Take a look. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Number 9 on the 10 Commandments. I mean, even way back, they knew that if you had a situation where people was giving false testimony, civilization would collapse. You would just fall back into a pile of accusations. She did this. She's a witch. She has to burn, okay? Here in the U.S. Constitution, I don't want to get into a lot of the details, but look at this. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses, okay? So there's recognition here, confronted by the witnesses against them. Witnesses are everywhere in our Constitution, in our Ten Commandments. You're not going to find a single legal code anywhere in the world where eyewitnesses don't play an incredibly huge role. It's just going to be there everywhere. Okay? So here's a classic thing. Maybe you guys remember the trial of the century, right? This was the original trial of the century. And then it was replaced by the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, and it was replaced by O.J. Simpson and whatever. But, I can't forget the Rosenbergs. But anyway, this is the original trial of the century. Mrs. Annie Nichols sees two men leaning on a fence. She saw two more appear, a cashier and a bodyguard. One of the men leaning on the fence shoots the guard and the cashier. A car comes up, two men jump in. Oh, the two men jump in. Multiple witnesses, but none could give an accurate description. One guy's like, well, I don't know, this guy was awfully dark. One guy was very light, like a Finn or a Swede or something. Some say the driver had a mustache, and somebody said, no, he was clean shaven. But it was without a doubt that the weapon that was used was a .32 caliber bullets. Okay, that was no doubt, because they could retrieve the slug and look at that. So here we go. Nicola Sacco, a shoemaker, and Bartolomeo Vanzetti. I like those names. Those are good names. A fish seller were arrested. Now, you got to remember the moment in history here. There was, America has had hatred of ethnic groups that had just kind of traveled with the generations. And at this point in American history, hatred of the Italians was at an all-time high. Earlier, it would have been hatred of the Irish. Later, it would have been hatred of other groups. But anyway, both were armed, and Sacco had a pistol which fired .32 caliber bullets. Okay? Witnesses were brought to the jail, and they were like, are these the bad guys? Look at them. Look carefully now. Are you sure? I bet you these are the bad guys. All of a sudden, remember now, nobody could identify squat. Brought them to the jail. Check them out. You sure these aren't the bad guys? And all of a sudden at trial, 5 witnesses identified Sacco. One of them had previously said that I couldn't even see anything, so I wouldn't know who was who. One had told the policeman she hadn't even seen the faces. Another had said they didn't see enough to identify anybody. A fourth one had told 3 different people they wouldn't be able to identify any of the robbers previously. At trial, bang, he did it. 4 witnesses placed Vanzetti at or near the scene of the crime. One of these witnesses were like, well, I ducked as soon as I saw a gun. I mean, if the robbers came up, I couldn't do it. Okay? This witness said he was there. So nobody could identify Vanzetti either. But they showed these pictures over and over and over. You sure this isn't the bad guy? This looks like the bad guy. And they pushed it on him. So now, meanwhile, poor Vanzetti was accused of attempted holdup the previous year, and he had to go back to a different trial. And he had his other problems with this, okay? But anyway, he gets himself a 12 to 15 years on this last deal. Now Vanzetti's got to come forward to this one. Both of them, however, had alibis, okay? Sacco had taken a train to Boston to the Italian consulate and tried to apply for a passport. And the clerk remembered this guy because it was so silly, because he shows up and he wants to get a passport, but he's got this big family photo. And it's like, use this to make my passport photo. And the clerk's like, you're kidding, right? What am I going to do with that? I can't use that. Vanzetti was selling fish in another town, okay? He wasn't even in the city at the time, okay? But guess what? The jury believed the eyewitness memory over alibi witness. That's really what the alibi was. It was an alibi witness. They were both sentenced to death. They both died. Was justice served? I doubt it, but maybe, okay? But this is interesting. We're going to keep this in mind, because I'm going to talk about the requirement for short paper 8 coming up here. And what we find here is the eyewitness memory was believed over the alibi memory. Okay? That's really what it comes down to. Similar story, the Sawyer Brothers, kidnapping a store manager at gunpoint. Manager was forced into a car, 2 kidnappers, boom, pulled down these masks, right? And the manager said one looked Hispanic. They drove off an off-white 65 Dodge Dart. I don't know what a Dodge Dart is. Doesn't sound like a very nice car. One looked like a man who had recently applied at the store. These are all facts. Now, Sandy and Lonnie Lawyer pulled over in their 65 white Plymouth Valiant. Plymouth Valiant sounds just about as pathetic as a Dodge Dart, but it's not the same car. Neither looked like the composite sketch that had been created. Neither had applied for a job. At trial, the store manager identified the Sawyer brothers. These are the kidnappers. Now, 4 alibi witnesses said Sandy was at home at the time of the kidnapping. When this kidnapping happened, he was at home. 4 witnesses said Lonnie was at a printing plant visiting his girlfriend at the time of the kidnappings. Okay, so there's 8 witnesses saying they weren't there. The jury deadlocks 9 guilty, 3 innocent, and the judge says try hard. You can reach unanimity. Then there's this rumor, right? This guy claims he was a kidnapper. And then what happens is a private investigator talks to the manager and finds out these facts. Remember we had said the composite sketch, the fact that the kidnapper looked like a recent job applicant. These were not said at trial. These were kept from the defense attorney. And when they looked for job applications, they found that Robert Thomas had in fact applied for a job a week before the kidnapping. Okay? Despite this, then, the judge says, sorry, too much time has passed. Robert Thomas confessed in writing and on camera, then recanted, then recanted decantation, whatever. And eventually the Sawyer brothers were pardoned and given something like $10,000 for 20 years of their life in jail, something like this. Now, this is crazy, okay? Because think about this. We've got a situation here. Keep in mind, again, the 8th paper we're going to talk about. There is 8 witnesses, 8 people saying they were not at the kidnapping. There was 1 person saying that they were. Now, why the hell would a jury take the evidence of 1 person over 8? I don't even have enough fingers on this hand here now. Why would that be possible? Now, let's think about that. One is an upstanding citizen, a manager. The other is, I don't know Sandy Sawyer and Lonnie Sawyer, but I mean, they don't really sound like high-class citizens. Therefore, their friends maybe not, okay? And also, their friends are going to protect them, right? And so maybe these 8 witnesses don't really count, right? Because they're, well, very similar to that. I remember one time I was in an car accident. I got just flat rear-ended at a stop sign. I'm just sitting at a stop sign, and this just giant truck just pow puts my wife in the hospital because she was pregnant, and I mean it was just really bad. Just trashed my car, and thankfully it was a straightforward deal because the police were very quick to tell me that my wife could not serve as a witness. Now think about this. This dude that rear-ends me, if he had his buddy in the car, he and his buddy could say, we were not at fault. My wife would not count as a witness because she's my wife, and therefore the law says she'll probably just support what I say. So the law flat out discounts certain eyewitnesses. They just don't even count. You can't even use them. Is that what's going on here with these 8 witnesses here? Could be. Is it because they're perhaps not upstanding citizens like a store manager? Perhaps. We don't know, but any of these could be true. On the other hand, okay, I'm going to have to take a break there, and we'll come back to more of this stuff in a minute.